The severe weather outbreak that slammed Texas yesterday is about to wrap up, but not before one more round of dangerous storms impacts a huge swath of the country today. After that, we're looking at a fundamental atmospheric shift that will bring calmer conditions this weekend before the pattern reloads for what could be another significant severe weather episode early next week. All right, let's break down what you need to know. Starting with today's setup, the Storm Prediction Center has issued an enhanced risk for parts of the southern plains extending into the lower Mississippi and Tennessee valleys. This is a serious forecast, and here's why you need to pay attention. We're dealing with two distinct threat zones today. The first stretches from central Texas northeastward through Louisiana, Mississippi, and into Tennessee. The second area includes portions of the mid-Atlantic, specifically Virginia and Maryland. These aren't created equal in terms of severity, so let me walk you through each region and what you're facing. Across Texas, Louisiana, and the Mid-South, conditions are aligning for very large to giant hail ranging from 2 to 4 inches or larger, swaths of damaging winds, and a few tornadoes. The hail threat today is particularly concerning. North Texas could see hail up to the size of softballs, and that's not an exaggeration based on what models are showing with the amount of instability available. If you're in Austin, San Antonio, Waco, or the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this afternoon and evening will be critical timeframes to stay weather aware. For the Mid-Atlantic, we're looking at more garden-variety severe weather. Isolated damaging wind gusts and perhaps 1 or 2 brief tornadoes are possible. But the overall threat level remains lower compared to what Texas and the Gulf Coast are facing. Now, why is this happening? The atmospheric pattern driving today's severe weather involves a strong upper-level trough positioned over the eastern United States. This trough is providing excellent wind shear, which is the change in wind speed and direction with height. At the same time, a surface boundary is draped from Texas all the way back into Tennessee. This boundary is acting as a focal point for storm development. South of this boundary, you have a very unstable air mass with dew points in the upper 60s to low 70s, and that tropical level moisture is combining with strong heating during the afternoon hours. The result is an environment that's primed for supercell thunderstorms, which are the type of storms capable of producing all the hazards we're discussing today. Let me take you through the timeline for today, starting with the southern plains. This morning, we already have some hail-producing storms, but these are relatively disorganized. The main event kicks off between 1 and 2 p.m. Central Time. That's when supercells are expected to fire up along and south of the Interstate 35 corridor. If you're near Austin or San Antonio, watch the skies closely during the early to mid-afternoon. These initial supercells will have access to extreme instability, and I'm talking CAPE values exceeding 3,000 joules per kilogram. What that means in plain English is these storms will have tremendous energy to work with. The primary hazard will be very large hail, potentially baseball-sized or larger. There's also a tornado threat that cannot be ignored. If a supercell gets its act together and taps into the wind shear available along that boundary, a strong tornado is certainly possible. This isn't the most likely outcome, but it's definitely on the table. By 3 to 4 p.m., these storms won't last forever. Supercells in Texas typically have a lifespan of 2 to 3 hours in this type of setup. However, during that window, they can do significant damage. As we push into the 6 to 7 p.m. time frame, the severe weather threat expands considerably. You'll see a large area of storms from Alabama back into southwest Texas. Over in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, the mode will shift more toward a cluster or line of storms. With that evolution, the primary concern becomes damaging straight-line winds in the 50 to 60 miles per hour range. A brief spin-up tornado is still possible within these clusters, but the wind threat takes center stage. Back in Texas, isolated supercells will still be capable of producing large hail and perhaps a tornado as we get closer to 10 or 11 p.m. Then, as we move into the overnight hours, the severe weather risk finally begins to decrease. Shifting to the mid-Atlantic, the timeline is a bit different. Storm development here will be later in the day, likely between 3 and 8 p.m. The peak severe weather window will be pushing towards 7 or 8 p.m. tonight. If you're in the Virginia Beach area or around the Chesapeake Bay, you might see a few thunderstorms capable of producing wind gusts in the 40 to 60 miles per hour range. There's also a low-end tornado threat, meaning brief and weak tornadoes are possible, but not expected to be widespread. The key here is just staying aware and having multiple ways to receive warnings if anything does pop up. Looking ahead to Thursday, the severe weather threat drops off dramatically. The Storm Prediction Center currently has a very small marginal risk outlined for parts of Texas. This is one of the lowest risk days we've seen in quite a while. That marginal risk will probably expand in coverage to include more of central Texas as we get closer to the day, but overall, Thursday is looking much quieter. Then on Friday, a potent storm system with plenty of moisture will bring heavy rain and potential flooding concerns from the southern plains to the southeast. The severe weather threat will be mostly confined to the Gulf Coast, where damaging wind gusts will be the main concern. An isolated tornado can't be ruled out, particularly in the Florida Panhandle or near Houston, but confidence in widespread severe weather remains low. Here's where things get interesting. A persistent upper-level low spinning over southeast Canada will keep conditions cool and unsettled through the weekend into early next week. What this means for you is that after today's storm system exits on Thursday, we're entering a much calmer weather pattern. Temperatures are going to drop, and it's actually going to feel pretty nice out there, especially across the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and the Southern Plains as we start the month of May. This isn't record-breaking cold, but it will be a refreshing change from the volatile weather we've been dealing with. Freezing temperatures are still possible in the upper Midwest and Northern Plains this weekend, so if you have sensitive plants or outdoor concerns, keep that in mind. Sunday is shaping up to be a beautiful day across much of the United States. Very little in terms of active weather is expected, and after this multi-day severe weather outbreak, that's going to be a welcome break. Monday could see an isolated risk of severe storms from Pennsylvania back into Arkansas as a small disturbance circulates over Canada, but we're talking about a low-end threat with isolated damaging winds, hail, and maybe a low tornado risk. However, don't get too comfortable, because by Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, the pattern is about to reload. A large storm system is forecast to eject over the Rocky Mountains, and that's going to set the stage for the return of significant severe weather. I'm eyeing Wednesday in particular for a potentially major severe weather day from Michigan all the way back into Louisiana. This could involve all hazards, tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds. Then, as we push into Thursday and Friday of next week, severe weather may continue along the East Coast. Beyond that, May is looking active. The Midwest, in particular, appears poised for a return of severe weather sooner rather than later. One more thing to mention. Heavy rain and flooding will be an increasing threat from central Texas to the lower Mississippi Valley later this week into the weekend. While we're focused on the severe weather today, rainfall totals could become excessive in some areas, particularly where storms train over the same locations. Flash flooding will be a concern, especially in urban areas and locations with poor drainage. To wrap this up, today is the day you need to be most alert, especially if you're in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, or the Mid-Atlantic. Make sure you have a way to receive warnings, whether that's a weather radio, a smartphone app, or a reliable local news source. Thursday and Friday look much quieter, with only isolated severe weather possible. This weekend will bring a nice break with pleasant temperatures and calm conditions. But as we head into next week, particularly Wednesday, we're likely looking at another round of significant severe weather. Stay tuned for updates because the forecast will continue to evolve. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video.